Ladies and gentlemen, young aspiring professionals, welcome to the 8th episode of the Development Podcast. In this episode, we are going to explore the world of PR and talent management, as I'm very happy to welcome the Managing Director of Ad Management, Georgia Adderley. Georgia, welcome to the Development Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, as usual, Georgia, you probably already know this. We ask our guests 3 introductory questions to get to know them a bit better. And of course, you're going to be no exception. So if you're ready, can we start?
Yes, let's go for it.
Perfect. Well, my first question for you is, what did you study in school?
So at university for my bachelor's degree, I studied broadcast journalism. So it was a lot of TV, radio, podcast journalism. So I love all things to do with that. And it was basically because I didn't really know what to do. I was not very academic at school, but I was always very good at connecting with people, chatting to people. And it was just something that really interested me. And then during COVID, I actually did an MBA with marketing. So that's a Master of Business Administration with marketing. And it was something that I did during my own time. And it was a time where I was working in sports marketing, and COVID obviously stopped sport across the world. And I was like, I really want to learn it during this time. So I did an online MBA, which was a lot more difficult than I was expecting. I'm not super academic, as I mentioned, but it was a really good insight into sort of running a business and the marketing side of it as well. So yeah, 2 sorts of education there. One more traditional university in the UK in Nottingham, and then one while I was living in Dubai, I did a master's during COVID. So that's my 2 sort of main educations outside of high school.
Well, we're going to get into your life in Dubai a bit later on. But for now, what was your first job?
Oh, my first job, I would say I was working for my dad when I was a lot younger, if you can call it a job. He kind of works in the world of home improvements and building. And I was pretty much a tea girl, would go and make all the cups of tea for everyone in the office, do the paperwork, shredding the paper, that type of thing. And then probably my first job, not for my dad, was it used to be called BHS, which was a home store in the UK. It no longer exists, I don't think. So I worked in the home section in there, which was selling all like the lights, towels, bathroom accessories, and eye-level home creative things, interior design. So it actually suited me quite well in there as my first job, not working for my dad.
Nice one. Now, the last of the introductory questions, who or what would you call your biggest inspiration?
There are so many. I think externally, I could list so many powerful women who have sort of changed the industry in various different industries. Serena Williams would be one who I think is a really inspiring female. She's torn down a lot of barriers. But I think closer to home, I've listened to your podcast before. A lot of people say family members. And for me, I have 2 younger sisters. They're quite a bit younger than me. One is 7 years younger than me and one is 14 years younger than me, but we're incredibly close. So I would say my 2 sisters bring me a lot of inspiration for different reasons. And yeah, I would definitely like to highlight both of them as an inspiration for me.
Very lovely. Well, big shout out to your 2 sisters indeed. Let's move on with your career beginnings. Can you walk us through your journey of launching a PR agency? Why did you choose for this career path?
Well, I wouldn't say it was something that I necessarily chose. I think like a lot of things, and obviously this is supposed to inspire young people. I think there's a lot of pressure on young people to know exactly what you're going to do. And I think it's actually to say, you don't need to know 100%. You will do things and sort of learn things along the way, which is what happened for me. So I graduated uni at 21 and I actually moved to Dubai for an internship in PR and marketing, and eventually ended up working for a big agency over there, and ended up being in the country there for 8 years, which I know we'll come on to. But so I had that experience of working in a marketing agency. But for me, my passion, a big interest for me is sport, wellness. So very recently really set up ad management at the end of last year, which is more focused on sport and wellness, PR, marketing and talent management. So I think I obviously had the experience of working for another agency, which got me into sort of how things work, how you do business. But then my passion side of kind of sport got me into setting up my own company. So we're still in the beginning stages of it, but I think you definitely have those stages throughout your career where you learn different aspects, which then you can either take on to work for somebody else or to also work for yourself, which is the stage that I'm at now with ad management.
Throughout your career, you've been involved in sports communications for various high-profile events like the DP World Tour Golf Championship, or even you've collaborated with really big brands like Adidas. Could
Yeah.
you highlight some of these experiences? What were the greatest highlights of them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I really love sport. I think it's where I sort of come to life. And that's the recommendation I would have for people is do something that really makes you feel alive and you really enjoy. And a great experience I had, I think it was in 2022, was a project working for the DP World Tour Championship, which was one of the championships within the PGA Golf Tour. It was quite interesting because it was during a time where there was like live golf also coming around and lots of conversations around that. So it was a very interesting time to be involved in the world of golf, and worked on the comms team for the championship that happened in Dubai. So what's really interesting working on events like that is, seeing the behind the scenes. There is just so much that goes into these championships. It's amazing that people get to come and watch and see the stars, Rory McIlroy, John Rahm, all these incredible golfers, out there doing their thing. But behind the scenes, so much goes into it, and they have incredible teams on the PGA Tour, and they travel around the world with the golfers and kind of make things run in the background. So I think having that experience being behind the scenes was amazing, and working in the press office. Obviously they have the interviews after each day of the tournament, and obviously from a PR perspective, you're there to sort of maybe guide some questioning, make sure no controversial topics are covered too much, and just really make sure there's a positive relationship there between the golfers, the talent, and also the media as well. So I think that was a great experience. I really enjoyed that. With Adidas, worked with them for 2 years with a female football club over in the UAE. We did some incredible projects. That was during the time when there was the FIFA Qatar World Cup happening. So lots of excitement for football in the region. And we worked at their official FIFA fan zone, running kind of events and things that the audience could get involved with. So for example, people would come to watch the games. Obviously a lot of fans for Argentina, which is amazing that they won the World Cup. But in between those games, we'd have a mini football pitch. It was the Adidas Al Rihla Arena, and people would come down, have a go on the football pitch. And we had a lot of interesting things that would happen during halftime. So, working on these big events with big brands is something that's really, really exciting. And for me, it was a great way to see a different behind the scenes and see how things run, and also trying to get people into sport. I'm not a footballer myself, but I'm obviously a lot in the world of football right now, but always been very interested in sport. But it's getting anybody who, even if you've never kicked a football before, even if you've never played any sport, it's like sport is for everyone and it's a great part of life. So I think those events definitely bring people together in different ways, which is great.
Indeed. Now that we are kind of geographically in the Middle East, let's move from Qatar, let's to Dubai and talk about your experiences there. You lived there for over 8 years. How
Yeah,
has this experience influenced your professional growth and approach to work?
I think obviously being from the UK, moving abroad, anywhere that you go, it's a fantastic opportunity to meet different people from different cultures, different nationalities, different religions. And it really opened my eyes to all the different types of people that there are in the world, which was incredible. I really enjoyed working with people who were very different to me, and I think I learned a lot from different cultures and from living in a Muslim country and living somewhere that was so different to where I grew up. I think obviously there's good and bad that comes with it. I definitely missed the UK and missed family, but I think I had incredible experiences in Dubai that I perhaps wouldn't have got if I'd have stayed in the UK. Even professionally, I was very much thrown in at the deep end, involved with new business pitches as a young 21-year-old, which probably in London might not have happened for me. So it was very interesting to be working with such big clients at such a young age. One of my biggest first clients was actually Instagram. So we launched Instagram stories in the Middle East, if you can remember a time before there was Instagram stories, which is an incredible experience, working on such big brands. Dubai, people think it's such a big place. It's actually a very, very small place. The population of the whole UAE, I think, is less than the population of sort of London or the outskirts of London as well. So people think it's a really big, scary, shiny place, which it can be, but it's actually quite a small city compared to a lot of places in Europe, for example. So it was an incredible experience. And I think if anyone's got the opportunity to live in a country that isn't your home country, I would recommend that, because you learn so much and you meet so many different types of people, which is amazing for you and your career and your life as well.
I can also sign a statement. Guys, if you can get the opportunity to move abroad, just even if just for a while, just go for it, because it will really teach you a lot. Now, Georgia, you are also a FIFA player agent. At
Yes.
what point in your career have you decided to take the FIFA player agent license exam, and why?
So I've worked a lot in sort of influencer marketing, brand deals, that type of thing. And I've also been involved in football separately, running a club, creating communities. So I've had the two sort of sides of it really there. And I know a lot of people that play football, a lot of connections in football, and they were kind of saying to me, Georgia, why don't you think about being a football agent? It's quite similar to what you've done with like influencer marketing, but just obviously making sure that the football side of it is there and the playing side of it is there. And it was actually last year that FIFA introduced the FIFA football agent license. So now, basically, to be a football agent, you have to be licensed by FIFA. If you also want to operate in certain countries, they also have certain rules to do with that as well. So I'm also an FA registered agent in England as well. So I took the exam in September last year, so September 2023. And the rules sort of came into effect officially in January this year in England. So it was kind of a mixture of things. It was trying to combine some things that I've done throughout my sort of 10-year career with also the movement and the direction that football's going in, women's football as well. So I took the opportunity, did the exam. I think a lot of people actually didn't pass the exam. It was a lot more difficult, I think, than people thought. Heard somewhere that only a third of people that took the exam passed. And of that third, only sort of 3-4% were women, I believe. So definitely in more of a minority there. And yeah, it's something that they only introduced last year. So it's quite new. Lots of changes going on around FIFA. But for me, it was a passion thing, and trying to pull together my experience throughout the years, and trying to do it for the right reasons. I know a lot of people have maybe had some negative experiences with agents across the years. I've heard from quite a few people I know. So I wanted to kind of get involved and do it for positive reasons and to try and do it to make a difference.
Nice one. Well, I think your passion for supporting women in sports is quite evident. Could you share some initiatives or projects you've been involved in to promote gender equality in sports?
Yeah, I think it's something that it is an everyday life thing. I mean, there's always initiatives, there's always things you can get involved with. There's a fantastic organization in the UK. It's called Her Game Too, and it's essentially to support women, not just in women's sports, but in sport in general, to feel more included. And that's something I've been learning a lot about recently. But for me, I feel like rather than initiatives, it's more how you are in your everyday life, right? I think when I first started working in sports marketing years ago, it's very much a male driven industry, as we know. And I think it could be easy for women to get intimidated to get into sport. And I think it is a shame. I'm quite a strong character. I've got a lot of self-belief. I've got thick skin, which definitely helped me as a female working in sport. But I think now I would just encourage women to try to get involved and to not be afraid. But I think there are so many initiatives out there. One of them is called Women in Sport. There's also Women in Football. So there's a lot of great things happening in this space, but I do believe that you don't necessarily need an initiative. I think it should be something that people just do in their everyday life. And I think having that gender balance is important. I think it's not to say women are here and we're taking over the world. I think gender balance is really, really important, and having different people at the table, different nationalities, different beliefs, different genders, to have that balance of and more creativity. To be honest, I think to have a mix of people there is really important in whatever you do, not just in sport. So yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Now, I'm sure you are able to meet a lot of legendary names throughout your career. Are you able to share some?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got a real mix, let's say, some in the world of sport and football, some in the world of maybe entertainment. One person, I mean, in terms of football, we've got people like Michael Owen, obviously a legend of the game in England, worked with him on a couple of projects, really lovely guy. Also had some more involvement from perhaps more of a distance, people like Ronaldinho, obviously another legend of the game in a different way. Also names such as David Attenborough. Got to interview him quite a few years ago, and obviously he's such a legend of broadcasting. So that linked back to my degree of broadcast journalism and having that interest there. But I've met so many incredible people. I think also sometimes that some of the best people you meet aren't necessarily big names. You know, you'll meet some incredible people that are just changing the game or changing the world really behind the scenes. And some of the best people really I've met maybe aren't necessarily celebrities or the most famous names, but are really making a positive difference. But yeah, I think there's so many legends like in the women's game that I would perhaps call friends, that I think are really doing positive things both on and off the pitch. You know, I have to give a shout out to my friends Viv Miedemar and also Beth Mead, both incredible people on and off the pitch. Before players, I think they're just incredible people, and there's a lot of good people in the women's game as well.
Well, definitely some Hall of Famers there. Now, as we approach the end of this podcast, I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk a bit more about your profession. Can you share some strategies or insights on how athletes can effectively leverage their personal brand for collaborations?
I think personal branding is so important these days. It's something that I'm working with individuals on and also clubs. I believe that sports clubs can work with their players, work with their team to, if you improve the personal brands of everyone there, it improves the brand of the whole place. And I'm really, really passionate about that. I think there's an opportunity for athletes to use their profile for good, both for themselves and also for the community. So personal branding comes into that. A lot of people think personal branding is like social media, you know, posting all the time. Social media, of course, comes into it, but there's the online and the offline persona, and I think that's really important. So it's, you know, if you're a football player, for example, how you interact with fans both in real life and also online. You know, are you there signing the autographs, chatting to the fans, making that connection, or are you going straight down the tunnel and then posting on social media? I think having that balance is really important of the real life and also online. Also, personal branding can come into things such as how you present yourself, you know, the type of things that you wear. Are you the person that's always in red trainers and that's kind of your trademark? You know, for me, I'm always in a blazer. I love wearing blazers, even in maybe situations that you shouldn't maybe wear a blazer. But I think personal branding is communicating who you are on the inside externally. And I think a lot of athletes in particular sometimes feel shy to do this and embarrassed to post on social media or embarrassed to get too close with the fans and connecting with the community. But it's such an important part, and an important part of being an athlete is being a role model. I think particularly in women's sport, it's no secret that often women will have to find ways to make money off the pitch, whereas perhaps male players don't need to as much because there's an increase in salary there. But I think it's really important for female footballers to use their profile for things like brand partnerships, for making a difference in the community, while also, you know, making money for themselves and supporting themselves off the pitch. So I think that's something that's really important. And I'm passionate about partnering athletes with brands that match up. So if, for example, somebody's really passionate about sustainability, can they partner with a sustainable brand? If they're really passionate, if they're a footballer, but they're really passionate about F1, can they be partnering, with racing brands? Or I just think there's an important opportunity for synergy there, both to help improve them as a person, to help them financially, but also to make a difference in the community and inspire young people that, okay, you don't just have to be a footballer, you're a person who plays football as your profession, but you also have other interests as well. So I think that's really important when it comes to personal branding.
Looking into the future, how do you see the intersection of sports, marketing, and social media evolving in the next few years? And what implications will does it have for athletes and sports professionals?
I think it's evolving massively. I think it's something people want access to people all the time, which with that comes the good and bad. And I do think it's really important for athletes to have that personal connection and to use social media. And it will evolve. We're even seeing things such as AI, or even before previously, we perhaps wouldn't have thought of things like digital conferences, online conferences. And I think that will grow and grow and grow. And perhaps we'll all be wearing headsets to visit the next sort of football conference. But I think that side of it will definitely evolve. But I think it's also important to remember things such as mental health and making sure there's the opportunity for that balance, because there will definitely be difficulties that come with that evolution. I think athletes and people in general need to have support to perhaps compartmentalize. There's a lot of nastiness online. I experience a lot of it myself as a female in sport. I know a lot of female athletes experience it as well. So I think there needs to be more legislation to protect people from just being able to hide behind a keyboard and have this sort of online bullying. I don't think is acceptable. And I think it's something that will need to change as this evolution grows within the world of marketing and digital marketing and sort of player interactions. So I think it's really important to have that balance of yes, having a personal brand, yes, connecting with the fans, yes, using marketing to your advantage. I think obviously my whole business is built on that. But I think it's really important to have the balance of, everybody's a human being at the end of the day, and just making sure we have that kindness and that mental health support there for players and individuals as well.
We've almost reached the end of the podcast now, but there is one last question that is quite asked to everybody on this podcast. And there is a lot of aspiring sports agents and aspiring PR professionals out there. What advice would you give to them right now?
I think my answer to this question has evolved. I think before I would always say, don't be afraid, just go for it. And that's something that I've said for so many years. But I took a step back and thought, I've actually have been afraid, but I've gone for it anyway. And I think being afraid or being nervous or being nervous to try something new is okay. And it means that you care and it means that you want to do a good job. So I've evolved from saying don't be afraid. It's kind of don't be afraid, but give it a go anyway. What's the worst that can happen? Just try your best. And I think particularly as women in sport, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking to walk into a room full of men at a football event or something like that. But having those nerves is okay, but just going for it and being yourself, I think is really important. So having that balance of trying to just put yourself out there in a positive way is really important.
It was a wonderful piece of final advice. Georgia, thank you very much for coming out to Talent Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, and look forward to seeing you at Soccerex as well.
Indeed, and thank you so much to all of you for listening. Whether you have just listened on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, make sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a future episode of the Talent Podcast. Also, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok not to miss all the behind-the-scenes content. And we've mentioned Soccerex just now. If you'd like to talk to Georgia or me in person, then you can still get your tickets to Soccerex Europe by going to soccerex.com. That's a wrap up. Until next time, keep kicking.